The early 20th century in India was a time of great unrest. Indians had long been subjected to British rule. They yearned for freedom. The desire for self-rule echoed throughout the nation. From bustling cities to remote villages, Indians from all walks of life were rising up. They were demanding a say in their own destiny. The struggle for independence was gaining momentum. The Indian National Congress, led by visionaries like Mahatma Gandhi, was at the forefront of this movement. Gandhi, with his philosophy of non-violent resistance, had captured the imagination of the masses. His call for satyagraha, or truth force, resonated deeply with the people. It offered a powerful weapon against the might of the British Empire. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the destiny of India. In 1927, the British government appointed the Simon Commission. This commission was tasked with reviewing the political situation in India. The goal was to recommend further constitutional reforms. However, there was a glaring problem that ignited outrage across India. The Simon Commission was composed entirely of British members. There wasn't a single Indian representative. This exclusionary approach was seen as a grave insult by Indians. Cries of "Simon, go back" echoed through the streets. It reinforced the belief that the British saw Indians as unfit to govern themselves. The very formation of the Simon Commission, without Indian representation, revealed the deep-seated prejudices within the British Raj. The arrival of the Simon Commission in India in 1928 was met with intense protests and fervent demonstrations. All across the nation, Indians united in their fierce opposition. They resolutely boycotted the Commission's proceedings. The powerful cry of "Simon, go back" reverberated through the streets. The boycott of the Simon Commission was a watershed moment in India's struggle for independence. It demonstrated the immense power of unity and non-cooperation. The message was unequivocal. Indians would no longer accept decisions imposed upon them without their consent. The demand for self-rule was growing stronger and more unified. In an attempt to address the growing unrest in India, the British government convened a series of round-table conferences in London between 1930 and 1932. These conferences aimed to bring together Indian leaders representing various communities and interests, along with British officials, to discuss India's future constitution. Mahatma Gandhi, after much deliberation, decided to attend the Second Round-Table Conference in 1931. He hoped to negotiate a path towards dominion status for India. However, the Round Table conferences ultimately failed to produce a concrete agreement. Deep divisions remained between the Indian delegates and the British government on key issues like self-rule and minority rights. Gandhi returned to India disappointed. The struggle for independence was far from over. Section 5. The Gandhi Irwin Pact, a temporary truce. With the failure of the Round Table conferences, tensions between the Indian National Congress and the British government escalated. Gandhi launched the civil disobedience movement, which would shake the foundations of British rule in India. In the midst of this turmoil, a glimmer of hope emerged. Lord Irwin, the Viceroy of India, sought a way to end the growing unrest. In 1931, Gandhi and Lord Irwin signed a historic agreement known as the Gandhi Irwin Pact. This pact brought a temporary halt to the civil disobedience movement. It included provisions for the release of political prisoners and allowed Indians to produce salt for their own consumption. The Gandhi Irwin Pact was a significant development, but it proved to be a fragile truce in the long struggle for Indian independence. Section 6. The Salt Satyagraha, a pinch of defiance. One of the most defining moments of India's struggle for independence was the Salt Satyagraha, launched by Mahatma Gandhi in 1930. This non-violent protest targeted the British salt monopoly, which had imposed a hefty tax on salt, a basic necessity for all Indians. Gandhi, along with thousands of his followers, embarked on a 240-mile march from Sabarmati Ashram to the coastal town of Dandi. They walked for weeks, their numbers swelling along the way. Upon reaching Dandi, Gandhi defied the British salt law by simply picking up a lump of salt from the seashore. This act of defiance sparked similar protests across the country. Section 7. The Civil Disobedience Movement, India's Unyielding Spirit. The Salt Satyagraha marked the beginning of the Civil Disobedience Movement, a nationwide campaign of non-violent resistance against British rule. Millions of Indians, inspired by Gandhi's message, participated in various forms of protest. They boycotted British goods, refused to pay taxes, and courted arrest in massive numbers. The British government responded with brutal repression. Thousands of Indians were imprisoned, including Gandhi himself. However, the spirit of resistance remained unbroken. The civil disobedience movement demonstrated the unwavering resolve of the Indian people to achieve freedom. Section 8. A Legacy Forged in Struggle. The events of the 1930s, from the Simon Commission to the civil disobedience movement, were pivotal in shaping India's destiny. They exposed the inherent injustices of British rule and galvanized the Indian population. The sacrifices made by countless Indians during this period laid the foundation for the nation's eventual independence in 1947. The struggle for freedom instilled a deep sense of national pride and unity. It also highlighted the power of non-violent resistance as a potent weapon against oppression. Section 9. Towards the Dawn of Freedom. While the road to independence was long and arduous, the events of this era brought India closer to its dream of self-rule. The Simon Commission, though ill-conceived, sparked a wave of protests that demonstrated the power of Indian nationalism. The Round Table Conferences, despite their failure, offered a platform for Indian voices to be heard on the international stage. The Gandhi Irwin Pact, though a temporary truce, showed the willingness of some within the British establishment to engage with Indian demands. And finally, the civil disobedience movement, with its emphasis on non-violent resistance, captured the moral high ground and exposed the brutality of the British Raj. These events collectively paved the way for India's eventual independence. They stand as a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Indian people in their quest for freedom. Section 10. The Salt March, a step towards freedom. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi launched an audacious act of civil disobedience that would become a turning point in India's struggle for independence, the Dandi March. This 24-day, 240-mile march to the Arabian Sea aimed to protest the British monopoly on salt. Gandhi, along with 78 of his followers, began this historic journey from Sabarmati Ashram on March 12, 1930. As they trekked through the heartland of India, the marchers were greeted by thousands of supporters, turning the Salt March into a mass movement. On April 6, 1930, Gandhi reached the coastal village of Dandi. There, in a simple yet profoundly symbolic act, he picked up a lump of natural salt from the seashore, defying British law. The significance of the Salt March lay not just in its defiance of the salt laws, but in its ability to galvanize the Indian populace. It demonstrated the power of non-violent resistance and brought international attention to India's plight. The march inspired a wave of civil disobedience across the country, with millions of Indians refusing to pay taxes and breaking salt laws. The British response was swift and brutal, but the Salt March had already ignited a spark that could not be extinguished. It showed the world the moral strength of India's struggle and the resolve of its people. The march was a testament to Gandhi's leadership and the unyielding spirit of the Indian freedom movement. It was a step towards freedom, a step that brought India closer to its ultimate goal of independence. And so, the Salt March remains etched in history as a defining moment in India's fight for liberty, a march that resonated with the hopes and dreams of a nation longing for self-rule.